He thought the day couldn't get worse. His last 50 rupees vanished into a stubborn vending machine, and he let it have a full volume lecture. The stranger behind him made one phone call and handed him the entire machine. His daughter adored her instantly. He suspected she needed psychiatric evaluation. Arav already knew the morning was against him, but he still hoped the universe would spare him just one small mercy. He had finished a double shift at the hospital, slept barely 2 hours on a plastic chair, and spent the walk to the lobby talking himself into believing that a pack of chocolate wafers from the vending machine would magically refill his energy. His daughter, Mira, happy as always and oblivious to grown-up exhaustion, clutched his hand and bounced beside him, pointing at the bright snack photos on the machine like she was picking from a festival menu. For once, he wasn't worried about money because he had exactly 50 rupees left, enough for one treat to share, and enough to convince himself he was still a decent father despite working 3 jobs. He fed the note into the slot, watched it disappear, and waited for the familiar whir and click. Nothing happened. Instead, the error light flashed red, and the screen blinked a cheerful but infuriating message. Transaction failed. He stared at it, baffled, then pressed the refund button. No response. He pressed harder. Still nothing. He gave the side of the machine a small slap, then a louder one, and then, because he was tired and broke and annoyed at the entire world, he unleashed a full lecture on how corporate machines were built on greed, how they fed on poor people's last coins, and how he would someday take a wrench to every one of them. Mira tugged his sleeve mid-rant and whispered, "Papa, is the snack coming?" He swallowed his frustration and told her maybe the machine was thinking about it. She nodded like this was perfectly reasonable. Behind him, someone cleared their throat softly. Arav assumed it was another customer waiting, so he shifted aside, still glaring at the error message. He didn't turn around until the woman said, "It stole your last 50 rupees?" Her voice was polite, warm, curious, and unfamiliar. When he finally looked, he found a woman dressed in a navy blazer, white shirt, slim trousers, and low ponytail, the picture of someone who belonged in boardrooms, not hospital lobbies. She held a phone in one hand and watched him with a calm expression he couldn't read. Embarrassed, he murmured something about bad luck chasing him since birth. She didn't smile at the joke, but she didn't judge either. Instead, she glanced at the machine, typed something rapidly on her phone, then looked up and said, "Give it a moment." Arav frowned because her tone didn't sound like a suggestion. It sounded like an instruction. The machine suddenly beeped, then another beep, then an unexpected click. Arav stepped back as the front panel unlocked with a soft mechanical hiss, like it had been waiting for this moment. For a second, he wondered if he had hit it too hard. Before he could figure out what was happening, the woman casually pushed the panel open and said, "It's yours now." He just stared at her. The machine took up half the lobby wall, weighed at least 2 people, and held enough snacks to feed a small classroom. "Mine how?" he asked slowly. As in, mine to use, mine to open, mine to what? She handed him her phone screen. It showed a completed transaction and a digital signature from a company he had never heard of. The line item read, "Full acquisition of Sips vending number 43, transferred to Arav Sharma." He blinked, scanned the screen again, and then again, wondering if sleep deprivation had finally broken his brain. "You bought the whole thing?" he asked. "Why?" She shrugged like it wasn't worth discussing. "Because it took your money, and because you looked like you needed a win today." She gave the machine a small pat and said, "It's yours now." Mira squealed, ran to the machine, and hugged it like it was a new pet. Arav, on the other hand, panicked. He stepped in front of the woman, holding up both hands like she was about to hand him a live tiger. Wait, you can't just give someone a vending machine. That's not normal. People don't do that." She tilted her head as if considering the point, but her expression stayed calm. "People also don't yell at vending machines like they're negotiating hostages," she said gently. "Everyone has their moments." Arav felt heat crawl up his neck. "Okay, that's fair, but still, why would you buy it? For 50 rupees? She put away her phone and said, 50 rupees wasn't the issue. Principles were. He didn't know what to do with a sentence like that. He didn't know what to do with someone like her either. She wasn't laughing at him. She wasn't irritated. She was simply certain. Certain that buying a vending machine was a logical response to a tech glitch. But before he could argue, a group of men in uniform wheeled in a small cart and a stack of documents. One of them asked, "Transfer papers for Mr. Arav Sharma?" Arav turned to the woman, horrified. "You actually bought it?" She nodded. "I did tell you that." Mira clapped excitedly as the men detached the machine from the wall and prepared to load it. Arav considered running. Instead, he rubbed his forehead, took a long breath, and said, "Can we cancel this, please? I can't own a vending machine. I live in a one-bedroom flat." The woman looked at him carefully, and for the first time, something like amusement crossed her face. "If you want to cancel, you can, but I think your daughter loves it." They both turned to see Mira pressing buttons at random and giggling every time the machine made a tiny sound. Arav sighed in defeat. "Fine, but can you at least tell me your name?" She extended her hand with smooth, practiced confidence. "Ria Saran." The name sounded familiar, but he couldn't place it. He shook her hand, hesitating. "I'm Arav." Her handshake was warm and steady. "Nice to meet you, Arav, and I'm glad I could fix your morning a little." She gave Mira a fond smile, gave the vending machine another pat as if blessing it, and then walked toward the exit. Arav watched her leave, then looked at the massive machine being hauled toward the parking lot, then looked at his daughter's delighted face. All he could think was one simple, exhausted thought. This woman is completely insane. He had no idea the truth was stranger. She wasn't just an eccentric stranger. She was a billionaire CEO who had just entered his life in the most ridiculous way possible.
Arav woke up the next morning convinced that yesterday's chaos had been a hallucination created by exhaustion, financial anxiety, and the faint smell of hospital disinfectant. But then he walked into the living room, saw a full-sized vending machine blocking half the window light, and accepted that life had crossed into a territory he did not understand. Mira sat on the floor in front of the machine, legs folded, chin up, staring at it as if waiting for it to speak. "Papa," she whispered, "do you think it dreams when we sleep?" Arav didn't have the energy to question her imagination. He was still trying to figure out how he was supposed to explain this to his landlord. Before he could attempt a solution, his phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Delivery team arriving in 10 minutes with transfer documents. He blinked several times, unsure if he had read it correctly. Delivery team? More documents? For a vending machine he had never agreed to own? Mira took his silence as an invitation to press buttons again. He groaned, grabbed his slippers, and prepared to face whatever absurdity followed. 10 minutes later, uniformed staff appeared at his door carrying a folder thick enough to be a mortgage application. They greeted him respectfully and asked for a signature in 8 different places. Arav stared at the papers, noticing the company name, Saran Tech Holdings. The logo seemed oddly familiar, like something he had seen on giant billboards or the cover of economic magazines. Before he could ask questions, the staff explained that the ownership transfer had been approved, logged, and registered overnight. "Miss Saran handles things efficiently," one of them said with a polite smile. Arav froze. "Miss Saran?" he repeated. "As in Ria Saran?" The man nodded. "The CEO herself." The room suddenly felt too small. He remembered the calm woman in the blazer, her steady voice, her effortless confidence, the way she bought an entire machine as casually as someone buying tea. He suddenly understood where he had seen the name. She was one of the youngest tech magnates in the country, often trending for either solving problems nobody else could or creating solutions nobody had asked for. And she had decided he needed help yesterday. The moment the staff left, Arav collapsed onto the sofa. Mira tugged his sleeve again, trying to feed him a snack the machine had dispensed earlier. "Papa, is she coming today?" He almost choked. "Why would she come today?" Mira shrugged like it was obvious. "Because she fixed the machine and good people come back." Arav opened his mouth to argue with the flawed logic before the doorbell rang before he could. When he opened it, he wasn't surprised, only exhausted, to find Ria herself standing there. Impeccably dressed again, though this time she wore a softer expression. She lifted a small toolkit in one hand and said, "Thought I should check if the machine is working properly. May I come in?" Arav rubbed his face. "I don't understand you," he muttered as he stepped aside. "I know," she replied with a small, amused nod. "Most people say that." Ria walked straight to the machine like she had installed it herself. Ara watched her kneel on the floor, roll up her sleeves slightly, and open the maintenance compartment. She worked with quiet concentration as if fixing vending machines was part of her nightly meditation routine. Mira sat next to her instantly, offering random tools from the box, naming each one incorrectly. Ria corrected her gently while continuing her work. Arav leaned against the wall, arms crossed, trying to process the surreal scene unfolding in his home. So, he said carefully, you're really the CEO of whatever giant company this machine belongs to? She nodded without looking up. Saran Tech. We own several automated systems. Vending is a small segment. Arav exhaled slowly. And you bought this entire machine because I yelled at it. She paused, looked up at him, and said, I think you are someone who could use a break. And I had the means. It was the simplicity of her answer that rattled him. She didn't say it with arrogance or pride. She said it with the same tone someone might use to explain why they held a door open for a stranger. Arav wasn't used to people solving his problems without expecting something in return. Ria returned to the machine and adjusted a few wires. This model has a recurring bug. The sensor misreads certain notes and locks the system. I sent a complaint to the manufacturer. Arav blinked. You filed a complaint? She nodded again. Of course, if a product from our network malfunctions, we correct it. Meena raised her hand like she was in school. Can you buy schools too? Ria laughed for the first time, a soft, unguarded sound that somehow made the small apartment feel warmer. I can't buy schools, but I can help them if they need something. Ara watched the moment unfold, and something in him softened despite his confusion. When the machine finally hummed back to life, Ria stepped back with a satisfied nod. There, she said. It should work smoothly now. But if it misbehaves again, call me immediately. She handed him a card with her direct number. The card was simple, black, and printed with her name in clean silver letters. Arav hesitated before taking it. You really expect me to call you for a vending machine? She shrugged lightly. If something breaks, I fix it. It's how I operate. He muttered under his breath. You operate in a very unusual way. She heard him and smiled. I've been told that too. Before leaving, Ria paused at the door while Mira hugged her around the waist without hesitation. Ria rested her hand on the child's head, surprised but touched. You're very sweet, she said. Mira nodded. Are you coming tomorrow? Arab opened his mouth to protest, but Ria beat him to it. If your father doesn't mind, she said, looking at him. Ara felt his chest tighten for reasons he couldn't explain. Let's take things one day at a time, he said carefully. Ria nodded in understanding, offered him a final polite smile, and stepped out of the apartment. After she left, the room felt strangely empty. Arav stared at the closed door for a long moment, then at the vending machine, then at his daughter's happy face. He knew two things for certain. One, his life had somehow entangled with a woman who solved problems in the most dramatic, unreasonable ways imaginable. And two, this was only the beginning. Ria Saran didn't strike him as someone who appeared once. She was someone whose choices rippled through every space she touched. And now, for better or worse, she had touched his.
By the time Arav wrestled the vending machine through the narrow apartment hallway, he felt like he had committed a crime and was pushing the evidence straight into his living room. The neighbors peeked through their doors as if he were wheeling in a satellite dish or a small elephant. Mrs. Gupta from across the hall whispered loudly to her husband, "He brought a machine home, actual machine," as if that explained any part of his situation. Arav tried to ignore the stares, focusing instead on not breaking his toes while guiding the heavy metal box around the corner. Mira followed him with proud excitement, announcing to anyone who would listen that Papa owns a vending machine now, a sentence that sounded increasingly ridiculous every time he heard it. When he finally managed to park the machine against the wall, he leaned on it, breathing heavily, already regretting every decision that brought him to this moment. Mira pressed a button, and the machine let out a soft beep. "See, Papa, it said thank you," she claimed. Arav closed his eyes. He needed sleep. He needed food. He needed his life to return to whatever version of normal existed before yesterday. Instead, he had a vending machine humming next to his sofa like a stubborn reminder that fate had a strange sense of humor. He considered calling the company to ask them to take it back, refund everything, and pretend this never happened. After getting Mira settled with a cartoon on the TV, he pulled out his phone and dialed the number printed on the papers. The customer service rep listened, paused, then said politely, "Sir, all ownership transfers are handled directly by Miss Saran. You'll need to contact her personal line." Arav nearly dropped the phone. Her personal?
No, that's not necessary. I just want someone else to take responsibility for this thing. The rep apologized again, in the same robotic tone, then added, Only Miss Ria Saran can reverse the transfer. Her number is... Erev cut him off. I already have it, he muttered reluctantly, remembering the sleek black card she had given him. He stared at it from across the room like it was a live grenade. Calling her felt ridiculous. Calling her felt like inviting more insanity. Calling her felt like acknowledging that they had some kind of ongoing connection, and he wasn't sure he wanted that. Still, the machine crackled with an unsettling buzzing noise, and his eye twitched. Fine. Maybe one call wouldn't hurt. He dialed, half hoping she wouldn't pick up. She picked up on the first ring. Erev, everything okay? She asked in a voice that sounded genuinely invested. He swallowed. The machine is, acting weird. She paused, then said with gentle amusement, Machines can't act weird. They malfunction. I'll come by. Erev nearly choked. Come by? No, that's not necessary. I just want someone else to take responsibility for this thing. But she had already said, Give me 15 minutes, and hung up. Erev stared at the phone like it had betrayed him. 15 minutes? What CEO arrived anywhere in 15 minutes? And why his house? He scrambled to tidy the living room, ignoring the fact that no amount of cleaning could make the sight of a vending machine in the corner look normal. Mira hurried around with him, collecting crayons, clearing her toys, humming happily. Is she bringing snacks? She asked. Erev sighed. No, Mira, she's not. Mira looked mildly disappointed. Maybe she'll bring tools, she said hopefully. You like tools? He asked. She nodded. Only her tools. Exactly 14 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Ria stood in the hallway with her toolkit, dressed in another impeccably tailored blazer, though her hair was tied differently today. Erev wondered, not for the first time, how someone so polished could also be someone who fixed vending machines as if it were a hobby. She stepped inside with a professional nod. Show me what it's doing. Erev gestured toward the machine, which now emitted a faint rattling noise that felt louder in the small apartment. Ria crouched beside it without hesitation, opening the panel with practiced ease. Mira sat down right beside her, handing her tools again like they had a long-standing partnership. Erev hovered near them, arms crossed, unsure whether he felt grateful, embarrassed, or deeply confused. Ria checked the wiring, pressed a few buttons, then said, There's a wiring issue. Whoever installed this model cut corners. Erev blinked. You can tell that just by looking? She nodded, focused. It's obvious. And it's dangerous. This could have easily short-circuited. His heart lurched. In my apartment? She looked up. Yes, that's why I'm here. Her tone was simple, like she was stating a fact rather than reassuring him. But something about the statement hit him harder than he expected. She had come because she cared about the safety of a machine she bought and installed. Or maybe, he realized, she cared about the people around it. After tightening a few screws and adjusting a component, she stood up. It should be stable now. You shouldn't have any issues anymore. Erev exhaled, grateful but still overwhelmed. Thank you, he said. She waved lightly. This is my responsibility. He shook his head. No, it's not. You didn't have to do any of this. She looked at him with that same steady calm. Maybe not, but I wanted to. The openness of her answer made him uncomfortable because he didn't know what to do with a person who offered help without expecting anything. Mira tugged at Ria's sleeve and held up a drawing. I made this for you. Ria's eyes softened as she accepted it. The drawing was nothing more than stick figures beside a very lumpy rectangle that was probably the vending machine. This is beautiful, Ria said sincerely. And Mira beamed. Erev watched the moment unfold, feeling more confused by the second. When Ria finally prepared to leave, Erev walked her to the door. Listen, he said slowly, you don't need to keep showing up like this. She raised a brow. Do you not want me to? He hesitated, unsure if the truth sounded rude or vulnerable. He said, I don't want to be a burden. She studied him for a moment, then replied, You aren't. If you were, I wouldn't be here. He didn't know how to argue with that. She offered a small smile. Not charming, not performative, just warm. And for the first time, he wondered if maybe she wasn't insane after all. Maybe she was simply someone who had never learned how to help in small ways, only big ones. As she walked away down the hallway, Mira waving enthusiastically behind her, Arab stood in the doorway feeling something he hadn't felt in years, a strange crawling sense of possibility. His bad luck had not only followed him home, it had brought someone with it. Someone who, against all logic, seemed determined to stay.
Arav didn't know what he expected when Ria returned the next afternoon, but it definitely wasn't the sight of a billionaire CEO kneeling on his living room floor with her sleeves rolled up and her hair coming loose from its perfect ponytail as she examined the vending machine like she was preparing it for surgery. She had arrived without warning, carrying a diagnostic device, a small toolkit, and the same calm assurance she walked into boardrooms with. Mira greeted her by throwing her arms around her waist, which made Ria freeze for half a second before she relaxed and patted the child's back with surprising gentleness. Arav stood awkwardly by the doorway, feeling like a guest in his own home as the two girls, one tiny, one terrifyingly accomplished, settled in front of the machine like they had a scheduled meeting with it. Ria powered up the diagnostic device and explained each beep to Mira, as if she were training a junior engineer. Arav tried not to stare, but the sight of her sitting cross-legged on his slightly outdated floor mat, focused entirely on solving a problem she didn't create, kept throwing him off balance. He wasn't used to people like her. He wasn't used to people who showed up. "Why do you look so stressed?" she asked without looking up. He blinked. "Because there's a CEO in my apartment fixing a vending machine." She gave a soft hum. "You say that like it's strange." "Ria," he said slowly, "it is strange." Her lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile but close enough to one that he felt it in his chest. "I like fixing things," she said. "It makes more sense than fixing people." That offhand comment sat between them for a moment, heavier than she seemed to realize. He wanted to ask what she meant, but she had already shifted the conversation, pointing to a wire. This is where the short-circuit risk was. If it had sparked, it might have damaged your wall. Arav knelt beside her, surprised by how close they were. "So you're saying you saved my apartment?" She shrugged. "The machine shouldn't have put you at risk in the first place. This is simply correcting a wrong." It struck him then she wasn't doing any of this to impress him. She wasn't trying to show off. She genuinely believed that when something fell under her responsibility, she fixed it. Period. It was a worldview he didn't understand, but he couldn't deny the sincerity behind it. Mira interrupted their quiet moment by excitedly pointing at a pile of snacks inside the machine. "Can I press the button now?" she asked. Ria closed the panel, wiped her hands on a cloth she had brought, and nodded. "Go ahead. Let's test it." Mira pressed her favorite button, and the machine whirred smoothly before delivering the snack in a neat drop. No rattling, no error lights, no sudden alarming buzz. Ria looked genuinely pleased. "Perfect," she murmured, almost proud, like a teacher watching a student pass an exam. Arav couldn't help but smiling, which startled him more than he cared to admit. It had been a long time since anyone brought that expression out of him so effortlessly. Ria noticed, and something flickered in her eyes. Something quiet, curious, almost hopeful, before she looked away. She stepped back and surveyed the machine like she was finalizing a report. She said, "It's stable now. No more surprises." Arav exhaled in relief. "Good. My electric bill cried just thinking about another malfunction." That earned him a real laugh this time. Not loud, but soft and warm, the kind that made him realize she had a laugh she probably didn't use often. She refused tea again. She claimed she didn't drink anything on workdays that wasn't water, but she accepted a glass from Mira as if it were a formal offering. She sat on the floor with the child beside her, sipping water while Mira chattered non-stop about school, stickers, and her new friendship with Ria. Arav leaned against the wall, watching the scene unfold with a mix of disbelief and something quieter, something he wasn't ready to name. He wasn't sure if it was admiration or confusion or the strange sense of ease her presence brought into the room. She didn't belong in his cramped apartment, yet she took up space in it without disturbing a single thing. At one point, while Mira went to fetch another drawing to show her, Ria looked around the apartment with a thoughtful expression. "You keep your home very organized," she said. Arav snorted lightly. "Trust me, this is the cleanest it's been in weeks. I have a kid." She glanced at him. "She's sweet. And independent." "She had to be," he replied quietly. "It's been just her and me since she was 3. Ria didn't offer pity. She didn't tilt her head or soften her voice or treat him like he was fragile. She simply nodded and said, "You're doing a good job." Those 5 words landed harder than she probably intended. He wasn't used to validation. He wasn't used to anyone noticing the effort behind the exhaustion. Before she left, she handed him a neatly typed maintenance breach report she had prepared. He started it, confused.
What am I supposed to do with this? She smirked. Nothing. I filed the complaint already. This is just your copy. He shook his head in disbelief. Of course you did. She stepped into the hallway, pausing when Mira wrapped her arms around her again. Ria returned the hug gently, her expression softening in a way Arav hadn't seen before. She turned back to him. If anything else breaks, call me. He hesitated. Ria, you really don't have to keep doing this. She looked at him with calm certainty. Maybe I want to. He didn't know how to respond. She didn't wait for him to. With a small nod, she walked down the hallway, her heels clicking softly, her silhouette sharp against the dim apartment lights. Mira waved until she disappeared. Arav closed the door slowly, feeling the quiet settle back in, but it wasn't the same quiet as before. Ria had left something behind, something he couldn't name yet, something that tugged at the corners of his thoughts. Maybe it was the fact that she fixed things others ignored. Maybe it was the way she treated Mira. Maybe it was the feeling that for the first time in a long while someone saw him, someone chose to show up. He glanced at the vending machine humming steadily in the corner. For once he didn't feel annoyed by it, for once it didn't feel like a symbol of bad luck. It felt like a doorway. And though he wasn't ready to admit it, part of him wondered exactly what this doorway would lead to, because Ria Sarin didn't feel like a coincidence. She felt like a beginning.
The morning started deceptively calm, the kind of quiet that tricks you into thinking the world is finally giving you a break. Arav woke up a few minutes before his alarm, stretched, and for a brief, dreamy moment believed that maybe today would go smoothly. Then the vending machine let out a loud pop, the apartment lights flickered, and the power tripped with a dramatic thunk that sent his hopes crashing back to reality. Mira groaned from her room. Arav dragged himself out of bed, muttering under his breath, and reset the fuse box. The lights came back, but the vending machine buzzed with an uneven hum that sounded like a dying robot. Mira padded into the living room in her dinosaur pajamas and pointed. "Papa, it's angry again." He rubbed his face. "It's not angry, it's malfunctioning." "That's what angry means for machines," she said confidently. He didn't have the energy to argue. He opened the machine's panel, stared blankly at the maze of wires, and closed it again. He had no idea what he was doing. He only knew that if this thing caused another electrical failure, his landlord would toss him into the parking lot. As if the morning wasn't chaotic enough, Mira suddenly gasped and remembered her school project, the handmade diorama she had spent a week crafting. It was due today. It was also, unfortunately, sitting inside the vending machine's bottom compartment where she had placed it for safekeeping. Arav groaned in disbelief. "Why did you put it in there?" he asked. She shrugged with disarming innocence. "Because the machine is big and empty and safe and also has a light." He opened the compartment, relieved it was unlocked, and pulled out the project. A massive smear of melted chocolate streaked across the main cardboard panel. Several figurines were crushed. One tree was bent sideways like it had gone through a storm. Mira's face crumpled, and her eyes filled with tears faster than he could react. Arav knelt and hugged her tightly, guilt crushing him. He wanted to say something comforting, but the words got stuck behind the panic that was rising inside him. Her project was ruined. They were running late, and he still needed to get to work. This morning was shaping up to be a disaster. He managed to salvage half of the project using quick patches of tape, glue, and silent prayers. It looked nothing like the original, but Mira insisted on taking it because, "Teacher will understand." Arav wished he believed that. He dropped her off at school with the best reassuring smile he could muster. As soon as she walked in through the gate, he slumped against the steering wheel and let out a long breath. The vending machine, the power failure, the ruined project. He couldn't deny it anymore. This machine had complicated his life far more than it had helped. And deep down he knew he should have refused it from the start, no matter how charming or determined its billionaire donor had been. When he got home, the machine buzzed ominously, the light flicking like it was possessed. After staring at it for a full minute, he finally did what he had sworn he wouldn't. He called Ria. The moment she picked up, her voice sounded bright and warm. "Good morning, Arav. How's the machine?" Something inside him snapped. "It's not fine," I said more sharply than I intended. "It tripped the power, it almost burnt the apartment, it destroyed my daughter's project, and I don't know anything about maintaining this thing. I'm sorry, but this whole situation is a mess." There was a pause, not offended, not irritated, just quiet. "I'll be there in 30 minutes, she said, and hung up. Arav instantly regretted snapping at her. She had meant well. He knew that.
But he was tired, overwhelmed, and painfully aware of how fragile his small world was. Rhea arrived sooner than expected. She walked in with her usual calm, toolkit in hand, but her expression held something new. Concern, maybe even guilt. She didn't waste time. She went straight to the vending machine, crouched and opened the panel. Arav stood by the wall, arms folded, trying not to hover. She worked with focused precision, scanning wires, checking connections, and running diagnostics on her device. Finally, she spotted the problem, a near-invisible wiring flaw that caused irregular voltage surges. She didn't say, "I told you so," didn't defend herself, didn't dismiss his frustration. Instead, she simply said, "You were right to be upset. This should have been caught earlier." Her voice was steady, not defensive, and somehow that made Arav feel worse instead of better. He exhaled and rubbed the back of his neck. "I shouldn't have yelled. I was stressed and I took it out on you." She looked up at him, meeting his eyes for longer than usual. "You're allowed to be stressed, Arav. You're carrying a lot." The sincerity in her voice caught him off guard. He wasn't used to people acknowledging his struggles without judgment. She finished the repair, tested the machine twice, and only stood up after she was certain the issue was resolved. "There," she said softly. "No more failures." He nodded slowly. "Thank you." The tension between them eased, replaced by something gentler, something neither of them commented on. Mira returned home later in the afternoon, bubbling with excitement because her teacher had praised her effort despite the damages. When she saw Rhea, she ran to her with the same ease and affection she showed to family members. Rhea knelt and listened to her talk about her day, holding the ruined project like it was a priceless artifact. Arav watched the interaction with a strange twist in his chest. It wasn't just gratitude, it wasn't just admiring, it was something he didn't want to name yet. Later, as Rhea prepared to leave, she hesitated at the door. "Arav," she said, "I want you to know something." He looked up, surprised by her tone. "What is it?" She held his gaze, steady and unguarded. "I didn't give you the machine to complicate your life. I gave it because it felt wrong to walk away when you clearly needed help. I'm sorry it caused trouble." He shook his head. "You tried to help. That matters more than the mistakes." Something softened in her expression and she nodded once before stepping into the hallway. After she left, the apartment felt different again, but not in the messy, chaotic way he feared. The machine hummed steadily in the corner, finally behaving. Mira hummed while coloring on the floor. And Arav stood in the quiet living room knowing one undeniable truth. Everything was changing. Rhea Sarin wasn't just a wealthy stranger who happened to intervene. She was becoming part of their lives. And maybe, just maybe, he wasn't as afraid of that as he had been yesterday.
Arav never imagined he would find himself standing in the glass lobby of one of the country's most powerful tech corporations, holding his daughter's hand while she stared wide-eyed at a rotating hologram of the company logo. Yet here he was, wearing his only wrinkle-free shirt, pretending not to feel wildly out of place, as employees in polished shoes and sharp suits hurried past with tablets and headset calls. Rhea had invited them. Well, to be precise, she had told him, "You should come by the office so we can finalize the vending machine transfer paperwork properly," spoken in her usual calm tone that left no room for argument. He had agreed, reluctantly, partly because he didn't want her efforts to seem unappreciated, and partly because Mira looked like she had just been told she was going to an amusement park. Now, watching his daughter try to catch the hologram with her hands, he wondered if this was a terrible idea. This place felt like another planet. Quiet, sleek, futuristic, and he was just a single dad trying to keep his electricity bill under control. When Rhea stepped out of the elevator, the temperature of the space seemed to shift with her presence. She wasn't overdressed or intimidating. She wore a simple ivory blouse and tailored black pants, her hair tied in a clean ponytail. But something about her confidence made the air around her feel different. Mira sprinted toward her in delight, and Rhea dropped to a knee without hesitation, opening her arms. The employees who happened to witness the scene blinked in disbelief. Apparently, it was unusual to see their CEO hugging a 6-year-old with complete softness on her face. "You look very official today," Mira said, tapping the badge clipped to Rhea's blouse. Rhea smiled. "I try my best." Then she looked up at Arav.
her expression shifting into something warm but steadier. "I'm glad you came." He nodded awkwardly, feeling oddly aware of the fact that he had ironed his shirt twice that morning. "Would have been weird to not finalize paperwork after you bought a whole machine," he muttered. She laughed softly, a sound that made him feel ridiculous for being nervous in the first place. She guided them through the building, pointing out labs, workspaces, and digital screens as if giving them a private tour. Employees paused respectfully when she passed, offering nods and greetings that carried unmistakable admiration. Arav noticed how even the busiest engineers straightened when she walked by. It hit him then, she wasn't just wealthy, she was respected. Something in her presence shifted people into focus. Yet when Mira tugged her hand to ask what a certain gadget was, she slowed instantly, knelt, and explained it with simple words and patience. Arav watched her with a mix of confusion and quiet awe. How could someone switch between these worlds so easily? When they reached her office, a corner room with floor-to-ceiling windows displaying the city skyline, Arav tried not to gawk. It felt like a different universe from his modest apartment. The walls held sleek digital boards instead of framed photos. The desk was spotless, with only a laptop and a minimalist pen holder. A soft breeze hummed from invisible vents, and the lighting adjusted when they stepped inside, as if welcoming them personally. Mira ran toward the wide window and pressed her face against the glass. "Papa, look! We're so high! The cars look like ants!" Arav stepped behind her, but stayed a few feet back. He trusted her excitement, but he didn't trust the idea of her nose smudging the CEO's window. She gestured for him to sit while she retrieved a folder from a secure drawer. He took the chair hesitantly, half afraid he might break something expensive just by breathing near it. She placed the file before him. "This has all the legal transfer details. Full ownership is now officially yours." He stared at the papers. "You really had your entire legal team work on vending machine documents?" She raised her eyebrow. "You think I did this halfway?" He didn't respond, but she was right. She never did anything halfway. He signed where she indicated, and when they finished, she closed the folder gently. "There. Now it's properly sealed." For a moment, the room felt still, filled only with the quiet hum of the city far below. Mira wandered back to them and climbed onto Arab's lap, then looked at Ria with bold curiosity. "Will we see you every day now?" Arab's heart stopped for a second. He opened his mouth to intervene, but Ria placed a hand over Mira's gently. She turned her gaze toward him. "That depends on your father," she said. Arab felt his pulse shift, his thoughts scramble. He didn't know what to say. He didn't know what the right answer was. He had spent years building walls around his small, predictable life, and she had walked in through a vending machine-shaped doorway and rearranged every piece of it. He finally spoke, his voice careful. "I don't know what this is yet. All of this, you helping us, this place, you." She held his gaze without flinching. "Then we figure it out slowly. There's no rush." It was the gentleness in her voice that unsettled him the most. She was always composed, always sharp, but when she spoke to him like this, soft, steady, it felt like she was giving him permission to breathe. He didn't realize how long he had been holding his breath around the world. Mira hopped off his lap and explored the office again, giving them a brief moment alone. Ria leaned on the edge of her desk, her posture relaxed. "Can I tell you something?" she asked. He nodded. She took a breath, glancing at the window before returning her eyes to him. "When I gave you that machine, I wasn't thinking like a CEO. I just saw someone struggling and I acted impulsively. I do that sometimes. But afterward, when I met Mira, when I saw your home, when I saw the way you hold everything together, I wanted to keep helping. Not because of responsibility, but because I wanted to." It wasn't a confession, not exactly, but it was honest in a way that made Arav's chest tighten. He swallowed, trying to find steady ground. "I'm not used to people like you," he said quietly. "People who step in, people who care without expecting something." She looked down at her hands. I'm not used to it either. Their eyes met again, and for a moment, the distance between their worlds felt smaller, as if they were standing on a narrow bridge instead of opposite sides. Mira ran back to them, grabbing their hands with equal enthusiasm. Can we come again? She asked. Rhea looked at Arav, waiting. He hesitated only a second before saying, if we're invited. Rhea's answering smile was small but full, the kind that warmed the room more than the city's sunlight. You're invited, she said. As they left the building together, walking through the same lobby that had intimidated him earlier, Arav realized something simple but undeniable. This story wasn't about a vending machine anymore. It wasn't about bad luck or good luck or impossible coincidences. It was about a beginning, unexpected, strange, and maybe a little terrifying. But a beginning he no longer wanted to walk away from.
If you enjoyed this twisty start to an unlikely friendship, subscribe to Drew Daily Stories for more single dad chaos, billionaire surprises, and emotional turns that keep you hooked. Your support helps bring the next unexpected chapter to life.